Gotta see my flock and part from ego. Can't blame the devil for my sins when me is who deceiving. Lord, use the excuse I was just human. Lord, using your word and wasn't truthful. Lord, you made me so much more. My constant sin a huge disgrace to the faith you bore. My constant excuses why I couldn't love you, not the world. When I was convicting all them people, it won't out your love. Good Lord. I turn away from sin to faith. My soul is yours to take. On knees I pray, and on your cross I place my transgressions, my sin and all its weight. Lord, forgive me for my evils as I die every day. And I turn away from sin to faith. My soul is yours to take. On knees I pray, and on your cross I place my transgressions, my sin and all its weight. Lord, forgive me for my evils as I die every day and turn away. Lord, I am selfish. With my mouth I'm reckless.
Peace. What's going on, folks? Back again. My bad, man. I had to start this stream over, man, because my sound quality was trash. Man. So yeah, we back again. We back at it again. So I'm gonna start over with what I said at first. You know, this whole situation with the Fresh and Fit podcast should not be alarming to anyone. It definitely should not be alarming to anybody. All of the key indicators were already there. Everything that they had to say, everything that transpired over the last the last day, because all of this has been happening just today, even up to the apology or whatever to their fans, all of this stuff, it was already there. We already knew that there was going to be an apology issue due to the situation, because those guys, when you see enough people and you're around enough people, you kind of can tell what people personalities types are and who really about what they talking about. You kind of know, especially coming from like places. I mean, I don't even want to say that. It's just literally, if you're around enough people, you can see that a lot of people aren't built like they say they are. And I'm not even talking about in the aspects of fighting. It's just the type of energy that has been existing since the battery got put in the back of Myron, with this whole Frank Castle situation. When the battery got put in his back, and everybody started doing like these compilations of the kickouts, and that became a whole thing. Once that started happening, we started to see the explosion of them trying to create these types of moments to further their careers on YouTube. And but this type of arrogance that has come off has always been there. Just a lot of people have ignored it due to the fact that they've only talked to women in these types of ways. You never, and the one guy that they did talk to, that man was blistered. And most men, when they come to other people's places, we not going. I know most men that I know, even like the biggest drug dealers or the shooters like that I've been around, because I shoot a lot of music videos. That's how I'm around these types of people. I shoot a lot of music videos here in Richmond, and I have family still here in Richmond, all sorts of sides of Richmond, and I've been in those elements all of my life. But however, thank God I'm no longer in those situations like that. But however, when you're around, like I said, when you're around a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, you get to see how people personalities start to turn into tropes. And when you start seeing people's personalities as tropes, when you see people on the internet, you start noticing what tropes are which. And the thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that was the fact that Myron was the biggest talking piece of the Fresh and Fit podcast, especially when it came to being the most aggressive one of the two. And the way that he speaks, the way that he acts, and the way that he engages any type of aggression, it doesn't matter who it is, the way that he engages just lets me know that he really isn't comfortable with himself in his masculinity enough to not be overly emotional in situations that do not agree with him, I should say. So one of the things I don't like about the red pill community, which is an offshoot of the conservative community, if it's an offshoot, it is definitely an offshoot of the conservative community. Because a lot of the ideals that come from the conservative community are a part of the red pill community, MG MGTOW community, manosphere, whatever you want to call it. All of it is a part of the conservative community at the end of the day. And one of the main things that has happened, especially within the manosphere and the MGTOW community, whatever community you want to call it, um, one of the main things that has happened is they have hijacked the values of the conservative man, and they have re-established certain terms. So you have men who will try to say that they speak logically, but they're only speaking calculations and not using correct logic. Now, deductive logic means that you can discern certain situations using, okay, if 1 plus 1 equals 2, that also means 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's logic. It's not, well, I throw the I I start talking about 1 plus 1 equals 2 in the mathematical realm, but then I start talking about colors. Now we're talking about art. We're talking about semantics. Or we use or we use mathematics and science to debunk um, something that's more along the lines person to person. For instance, Myron will use, or even here it is. Even when Myron uses statistics, he never uses the statistics in the manner to which they're actually purposed for. He uses them only to exacerbate his point. And so, therefore, even if the study is true, he's still wrong because he's using a screwdriver he's using a screwdriver in the manner to which you're supposed to use a hammer. So you can't use a statistic and say this is the facts, these are the hardcore facts, when the data that you're using isn't even for this specific situation. And I explained that in my last Fresh and Fit review. I definitely went through it on how he uses these calculations in and uses them in a way that is not um, conducive to a productive conversation. And you can tell that again, these people they lack people skills, they lack relationship skills, and relationship skills are hard to obtain for people who have either had many failed relationships and never learned from them, or they've never really been in any serious relationships that amounted to anything. So a lot of these men are like, oh, I don't want to be married. I'll never be married, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but you've never committed yourself to a relationship where you could be married. So how are you going to tell us how to find someone to be committed to if you yourself are not trying to be committed? It doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't. Um, and that's harmful to a lot of people who are looking for lasting relationships. And make this clear. It doesn't matter if you're a man or you're a woman. Human beings, on the level, regardless of what economic status you are all looking for healthy and long term relationships. We all are. We all are. That's what community is. A community is a long term companionship with many people. This is why people go to churches or go to fan clubs or go to clubs or go to places where they see familiar faces and they become a part of that group in that ecosystem, and they stay there for years and they never leave. This is why when people live in certain communities, they never leave, because they become comfortable in those ecosystems. This is why people are in the projects and they never leave the projects, and generations upon generations upon generations stay in the projects. That is why this happens. But I can't say because people are staying in the project generation after generation after generation, that also means that that's why the crime rate is high. That doesn't necessarily mean that. The projects just don't house criminals. Everybody in the projects doesn't do crime. You can't put a whole blanket on it just because one statistic is correct. And again, that's how he uses statistics, and it's incorrect. Now, with this conversation, as far as it goes with him versus, well, I shouldn't say versus, in their little spat that they had today with Abba and Preach, which was very immature in the way that they handled it. They definitely lost a lot of brownie points with their fan base because of how they acted when it came to putting up or shutting up when it came to their own ideas, because they instead of protecting their ideas or combating their ideas with conversation, they chose to be clowns. Straight clowns. That's what they acted as. Straight clowns. And, it is what it is. It definitely is what it is, But when you act a clown, when you are a clown, people are not surprised that you act like a clown. They're not surprised when you act out of character. See, this is why when you talk to, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying, like, people like me, if I get upset with anybody, or people say, "Oh, John, I never even heard this man raise his voice. I've never heard this man say anything, to be honest." When they see me get angry, it's, "Oh, snap, what just happened?" They know it's serious, because that's me out of character. But with these guys on the Fresh and Fit podcast, it's like that was always their character, or how they portrayed themselves the entire time. They never stopped being who they were. Even when they tried to put themselves on a pedestal of the biggest, the king of the hill. Even when they tried to put themselves on the pedestal of being the king of the hill, they always acted like this. And it was so befitting of Abba and Preach to call their video "The Emperor Has No Clothes," because nobody told them that their ideas were stupid before. Nobody has challenged their ideas. And within this entirety of this YouTube space, if you're afraid, it's kind of like what the liberals, what the conservatives or the Republicans always charge Democrats and liberals with. You guys are afraid for your ideas to be tested. You have all of these phenomenal and great ideas, but when it comes to testing your ideas, you go to the extreme of emotionalism instead of using proper logic and deduction to get your point across. And that's exactly how this played out. You had two guys who were more on the conservative side, which I don't particularly like the fact that Preach said let's box. Um, I don't like it, but I understand it because if you disrespect my family, you disrespect my wife, and you act like you really about their life, let's find out. I get it. I totally get it. I understand it. But however, um, me myself, I'm not really into that type of thing. Um, especially when it comes to being on the internet. That's not that to me. I would never handle a situation like that over the internet that way. I probably would have just made a phone call. I wouldn't have did it in public. I would have made a phone call, and then they would have had to either talk to me in private about it, or they would have had to make that. Well, they would have talked to me in private about it and then issued a public apology. The only thing I would have said in public is, when I call your phone, you better answer. That's it. You better pick up the phone when I call. And that's it. That's all it got to be. It ain't got to be no yelling. It ain't got to be no explaining. Because when it's time to go, it's time to go. It's go mode. What's beef? Ain't that what Biggie said? Real beef don't end in apologies. So this was just a little spat. It wasn't anything extravagant. And I think the reason why Fresh and Fit really did what they did was because they felt that Abba and Preach were going to be an easy target for one. Um, and the fact that they thought that this would create good publicity for their podcast. Because Abba and Preach, the way that they said, they do it and they make money off of it, and they're glad they are allotted the opportunity to make money from YouTube. Um, but this is they're not they're whether they're famous from YouTube or not is not the important part of it. It's just the ability to be able to express their thoughts on different situations and get a take on it, give their take on it. And I think for a lot of people, I think for some people, that's what it is. It's not this, oh snap, let me do what Kevin Samuels did and get a bunch of women on my podcast or get a bunch of people on my women on my show and we start arguments about these life situations. I don't think that's what it is. This is not the this is not the age of the Howard Stern show. This is not the age of the Howard Stern show. I'm sorry. Shock jocks are not in. Shock jocks are not in. It's not about it's not about you creating the shock factor. It's about the conversation being um it's about the conversation being interesting or uh revealing enough that people will want to listen. This is why when I don't forgot what her name, something blue or whatever, when she said what she said on the guy's platform, I forgot what it was. She was talking about I don't know the guy paying for her after they broke up or whatever. After that was had become a thing, and she had did her little run, her run from Kevin Samuels to um the Mess and Unlegit podcast to um MTR. When she did that, I ain't heard nothing from her since then. I think she's still doing OnlyFans. It made no difference. She was a flash in the pan. She was hot right now. She was the hot topic to be exploited and ran through many men. Oh my God, that in itself says a lot. Oh my God, that says a lot. For but we're not gonna talk about God children like that. It is what it is, though. It definitely is what it is. Um, But again, for these type of men to want to say, "Hey, I am, I'm this stature, and this is who I am, and I'm unbending to whatever you got to say," and then want to say this is a conversation when they're met with some type of aggression. That conversation is met when it comes to a real debate. When it comes to a real debate, you turn into a female. That says a lot. Because when it comes to ideas, somebody said that on the internet today. The internet is just about ideas. It is not even about you. It's about ideas. When it comes to ideas, such as the ideas about paying for sex, which has been something that's been going on since the beginning of time. Um, I shouldn't say beginning of time, but for eons and decades, it's definitely been going on forever. Um, Even us in the Christian aspect, we even deal with the fact that people, uh, for lack of better words, deal with the uh, prostitution aspect of life. There are a lot of women people. There's a lot of women over here giving it up to their pastors, and the pastor's paying for it. You know what I'm saying? Whether that be, it don't even matter what it is. She want a spot on the she want the lead spot on the praise team, so she about to get there go to choir rehearsal with the pastor. You know what I mean? But you know, this is something that has always, this is human nature, and when we start understanding human nature, and and I'm not being lewd when I talk about this stuff. I don't know why people would think I'm being crass or lewd about any of this. This is real life. This is what happened when it comes to life as an adult. These are the things that happen. I don't know why people shun these type of conversations, because when we don't have these types of conversations, then we lead ourselves into folly, because we don't really want to tell the truth about things. And telling the truth is, to some people, if it's crass or if it's rude when you're telling the truth, that just shows you who they are. They don't want to hear what it is that you have to say. And that goes to what I'm saying now. Myron's the Fresh and Fit's tirade, beta. Beta. Shout out to Jesse Lee Peterson, man. I love when you do that. That would be funny. Beta. It's just entertaining. But I need a brush. But definitely when you see these types of guys and they put themselves in these elements, when they put themselves in these types of elements, it's like, bro, we're gonna see you crack. We're gonna see you fold, because you're doing this every single night, and you got the opportunity to slip up every day. Every single day. And you put yourself in a position where we already know you would never put anybody of any real, who has any real ideals against you, or put them in the room with you unless they agree with you. A lot of the women that they put in those rooms are not the type that you can actually have. I take that back. They're not prepared for these types of conversations. And it's been said multiple times. This is why I definitely do not like the fact that he uses statistics in the way that he does, because he uses them in a manner that's not conducive to the conversation. It's not. It's never been conducive to the to having proper communications with other individuals. And again, when it comes to being adults, if you can't handle what it is that somebody else is saying, if it's get hot in the kitchen, get out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? And Myron decided to stay his butt in the kitchen, and Fresh, as the follower he is, follow right behind his fearless leader, and that's what happened. Both of them boys got shot in the street. They killed they doggone self. I don't know what that was. I don't know what it was. I really don't know what that was. But they killed themselves But again, they've been killing themselves the entire time because people put them on a pedestal. They put them on this great pedestal as they're supposed to be these great thinkers, and they haven't had an original thought the entire time they've had their show. Like they've never really had a dialogue that amounted to anything other than them staying on top of the conversation. They've never had any productive communications with anybody on their show. They've had some enlightening moments from guests on their show, but as it pertains to them themselves having a productive conversation and extracting or giving any information to the community, it's all been talking points. You might as well be watching CNN or Fox. You might as well be watching the echo chamber. You might as well, because that's what it is. And that's why I say this is Red Pill Rage Unleashed. That's exactly what this is. Red Pill Rage Unleashed. Everything that the Red Pill community loves that is toxic, that's what they do. You want to talk reckless to females on cam? Do it. You want to be able to tell females to get out? Do it. You want to get notoriety for being a boss and not accepting things from other people who don't agree with you? Do it. And we're going to stand behind you. And that is sick. That's sick. They should be calling themselves distressed and unfit podcast. Because, boy, that man be stressed out, bruh. Them ladies be stressing him out. Instead of him chilling and listening to the points and actually having a conversation, he's not talking in. Myron never talks to, he talks because he likes to hear himself talk. He doesn't talk to have a conversation or a dialogue or to be heard. He talks because he likes to hear himself talk. And that's all it is. It's just a bunch of word salad. Normally, it's word salad. It's not anything productive to the conversation. And I know sometimes I jump around, but it's just me by myself for right now. Hopefully one day I'll have another guest. I've had a guest before. And I definitely want to invite my guest back again. But definitely, yeah, man, it's kind of crazy how people treat one another when it comes to this thing called clout. It's crazy how we treat each other when it comes to this thing called clout. Definitely is, man. And when it comes at the end of the day, we definitely have to stop ignoring the red flags when they're there. And that comes to the people that we're watching. It comes to the people that we have relationships with. It comes to, and that means any relationship. Anybody who is in your space or in your realm, regardless if they're man, woman, or in between or whatever they want to call themselves, you have to be aware of who they are as an individual. And one of the things that reigns true, regardless if you're male, female, or in between or whatever they want to call themselves, everybody wants to be treated like a person, like an individual. And when it comes to individualized care, you have to see each person in each situation differently. So I'm not going to talk in blanket statements when I'm talking to an individual. I don't have to use blanket statistics to break down the thought process of an individual. I can break it down just simply by talking to them and asking questions. Which I think I know Kevin Samuels went to the entertainment portion of it and it's been becoming highly entertaining to watch and to hear, but it's always the same story. And one of the things he does so masterfully is he interviews these people well, and you can tell that he's been in a managerial position, and or he's had to hire people because he asks questions of these people. And normally, I mean, shoot, it's just like any manager. There's a script to ask questions to figure out this person is good for the company or not. But that's just something that they do. They have a script, and every question that Kevin Samuels ever asked has always been the same. Has always been the same question, and every woman who's come on his show has tried to answer the question differently, but they always answer it the same way because they're not really taking in consideration of their personal accountability in any situation. Now, as it comes to the Fresh and Fit podcast, they're a little bit different because what they do is they will, and I'm froze again. What the Fresh and Fit podcast will do is they will try and, excuse me. What they will do is they try as they may to sorry, I'm still streaming, but try as they may, they definitely and I lost train of thought there. But as it pertains to the Fresh and Fit podcast, what they do is they definitely do not come off as they only come off as okay. Now we back. They only come off as legitimate when they're aligning themselves with people who do not think in the same space as them. When they don't, these people don't think in the same space. They don't think in the same structured manner as them, and that's how they are able to obtain any sort of I'm on top in this conversation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I would never put a mouse up against a lion. You get me? I would never put a mouse up against a lion. I would never put a mouse up against a python. Python is better for this conversation. But yeah, man, that's basically it, man. These guys have never stopped being who they are. And again, we have to stop ignoring the red flags. It is what it is. Their colors never change. They've always been this. They've always been this. And now, you are seeing it in 4K. So with that said, like I always say, love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart. Peace.
I repent for being a hypocrite, a steady liar, presenting as a listener, but faith was quiet. Won't working how I said I was, cause all I gave was filthy rags. Gave in to all my demons, masked them all behind a porcelain mask. You cracked that, and the code inside my matrix. The man in the mirror ain't the same one I'm portraying. I lied, said it was you when I was speaking. Heard the voices in my head, ignored the word I got from reading. I admit, I deceived my flock in part from ego. Can't blame the devil for my sins when me is who deceiving. Lord, use the excuse I was just human. Lord, using your word and wasn't truthful. Lord, you made me so much more. My constant sin a huge disgrace to the faith you bore. My constant excuses why I couldn't love you, not the world. When I was convicting all them people, it won't out your love, good Lord. I turn away from sin and faith. My soul is yours to take. On knees I pray, and on your cross I place my transgressions, my sin and all its weight. Lord, forgive me for my evils as I die every day. And I turn away from sin and faith. My soul is yours to take. On knees I pray, and on your cross I place my transgressions, my sin and all its weight. Lord, forgive me for my evils as I die every day and turn away. Lord, I am selfish, with my mouth I'm reckless, passively aggressive, likened to the devil's message. It's this pride of mine that need to die in homicide. It's this life of mine that lack the love and sacrifice. Not because you ordered me, it's all because it's righteous. Piously, I obviously ignored important treasures. All these Jews you dropped on me, I gotta pick them up and bow my head because I'm humbled by the price they bought. I turn away from sin and faith. My soul is yours to take. On knees I pray, and on your cross I place my transgressions, my sin and all its weight. Lord, forgive me for my evils as